Still to this day, there's a lot of data leaks and sensitive information that's being leaked all the time. And the other thing is the privacy factor, which is the problem with AWS and Google and Microsoft Azure, is that they can actually read what you are storing on their servers. So they can actually scan your files and your data. Microsoft has been actually caught doing this in terms of scanning your information for passwords and trying to decrypt your files. The government that wants to and access to your certain information, and they say, hey, Microsoft, hand this over, more than likely they will comply with that request. So that's actually crazy, to be honest.
What's up, you three legends? Welcome back to the show. Today we're sitting down with Navjit Iagon, the CEO and founder of Iagon, or you may know them from their token, IAG. So Iagon is essentially trying to solve the major problem of creating a decentralized option for compute and data. When you go to your phone every single day and you use the apps that you know and love, the experiences like Uber, Airbnb, think of all these different applications that give us so much, but also know so much about us. Most of these major companies are relying on very centralized places like Amazon with AWS to store all the data and handle the computing necessary to run that application. The problem with that, as Nav will explain in way better detail than I will, is that you're relying so much on one entity and giving them way too much power. We already know that the massive companies have way more information than they need on us, and we don't have much control or say in terms of how far that really goes. Iagon is attempting to build a future where that isn't the case, where you're able to have a decentralized option for your personal data and the ability to power an application or something that you'd want to build that needs the computing power that you don't have without all of the centralization and control that currently exists in the marketplace. So this is a massive fundamental problem. If you think about the applications of this is a very, very serious thing that Iagon is attempting to solve, and they're working actively at doing that. So within this conversation, we explain how Nav got here, what Iagon is doing, how they're approaching this problem, and how they're going to solve decentralized compute and data storage. Nav provides some amazing details here, so definitely stick around for the entire conversation. This is a massive field that not enough people realize what's going on, but by the end of this conversation, you will, and you'll see why Web3 can be so transformative for the future of our world. And we are recording. Nav, how you doing?
Good. How you doing?
I'm great. So you just got back from Japan, so I'm sure we'll talk about that trip here shortly. But the bulk of this conversation will be about what you do for work, the company you work with, all that good stuff. But I would love to hear more about how you got into this Web3 world. Where was your origin story?
Yeah, so I actually started back in 2013. So when I first read the Bitcoin paper, is when I became interested in a little bit of crypto and blockchain. Reason I read into the paper is because I have a interest in technology in general. I did programming in high school. Obviously, didn't go into the university days because I went into I got my doctoral degree instead in dentistry. So I went in that direction. But that always the interest in tech always was with me, and I was always up to date with the new tech and what's happening in technology and things like that. So that's when I first came across Bitcoin, is when I read the paper on that and kind of became interested in what this was, and is this a scam, or what is this thing going on? So I got into it a little bit and read a little bit. After a few reads, kind of grasped the general idea of what they're trying to do and what they're trying to accomplish. And eventually, ideas came from this in terms of, how blockchain technology can be implemented into my field, which at that time was, dentistry and medical in general. So a lot of that has to do with sensitive data and, patient data privacy, things like that. So try to imply that into my world. And basically that's where the initial ideas of Iagon came. And a lot happened in 2013 to 2017 that I was, I had two kids and, a lot going on in personal life. So I didn't approach the idea till the start of 2017. And that's kind of when I had, a little bit better grasp of where I am and in terms of life. And I started focusing on this idea and because of stability that I had around me then. And then I started approaching industry experts because obviously for me it's all new, and I'm not tech savvy as other individuals. So I'm more from the business side, entrepreneur side. And then I approached Dr. Rohit Gupta, Dr. Claudio Lima, and Dr. Lad Harrison, who all have different expertise and different things they bring to Iagon, which is a distributed storage and compute platform, kind of like an Airbnb for storage and compute, if you will. And then they molded the idea instead of focusing specifically on medical data and just focusing on patient data privacy, it became a much more generic cloud service, kind of a competitor to AWS in the long run, of course, not in the short term. And that's kind of the vision, what it was established, and that's how we got into the crypto space and started with Iagon.
Sweet. So you had this idea back in 2013.
Yes, yes,
And
2013.
so what from reading that paper made you feel like this was feasible at some point and necessary?
Well, at that time, there was, and still to this day, there's a lot of data leaks and sensitive information that's being leaked all the time. NHS hack in the UK was also relevant at that time, around that time as well. And there have been so many hacks in the history in terms of data leaks and sensitive data being leaked out. So I thought it was very prominent and needed in terms of patient privacy and data privacy in general, and security of the data, and not like everyone's trusting these middlewares or middle softwares to hold their data and hold it securely. For me, it was I think it was much needed space because a lot of companies were talking about it, and a lot of technology was moving into the digital space even in 2013. So a lot of things were, for example, in Norway at that time, you had your own portal for healthcare, and that was early for that kind of digitalization. But things were moving into the cloud at that time. Data was kind of becoming the new oil, if you will, or the new gold, if you will. So data, and then it eventually obviously turned out correct because right now there's a lot of ask for data and compute in the industry, and AI is coming very relevant, which is keeping the topic very fresh.
1000%. And I had known of Iagon because I'm familiar with the Cardano ecosystem and I knew of the concept. But what really solidified my belief in it was over the past 18 months or so, we've been building applications and having to deal with AWS really got me familiar with all of its flaws, especially from like a user's point of view, and potential flaws in terms of extra things that developers have to do to try to safeguard us from things. And I was like, oh, okay, I get this now, right? And so the average person, I think, doesn't really understand how the tools they use are powered. So could you explain to them how AWS functions in terms of practicality for their life, and then why Iagon is trying to provide a different solution that's better?
Yeah. I mean, that's what it goes down to. That's what inspired me. Bitcoin inspired me, in terms of, holding your own assets, right? Kind of like, you control your funds. No middleman, no bank is controlling your funds, right? They say that a lot, right? Your keys, right? And this was very powerful in terms of, having sovereignty. I think as time goes on, a lot of people are accepting, unfortunately, that you don't own stuff, right? Which is
Nothing.
kind of
Yeah.
ridiculous. Like, how do you not own your own data? That just doesn't make sense to me, right? Uh, you have all these free tools around us that take your data all the time and mine your data and earn from it, and you don't get a cent back. You just get a service, right? Which is some fine for some people, but for me, it was kind of a starting point in terms of privacy to own your own data. So what we do differently than AWS. So AWS is, I'll try to explain at a very high level, right? Because AWS is very a monster.
Mm,
They have a
it's
lot of
huge.
features,
Yeah.
a lot of things that they're going on for them. But I'm just going to focus on the data side. Um, And that goes for Google Cloud as well, and Microsoft Azure and whatnot. So you have, when you send your files, for example, yeah, to even through Gmail or through Google Drive or to AWS, some sites keep their data on AWS. And sometimes they implement AWS into their websites and they use that on the back end. And it's not that AWS or Google Cloud isn't secure. It's sometimes there's implementations that people do and businesses do is insecure. Um, and I just want to make a point out there. AWS in general, if you implement it in the correct way, is secure, but there's other problems. I'll come to that as well. So first is that when you're sending your files, you are storing it in a central way. What I mean by that is it's stored on a specific server in a specific place, and the whole file is there. And there's redundant copies of those files, right, in different servers. So what happens is we call these data lakes, right? And data lakes basically are a bunch of data in a specific. We can use that analogy actually. So you have a lake with all the data in it, and then the fence is the encryption, and the encryption is the security. If anything happens to that fence or that security, uh, basically a hacker could come in into the lake, jump into the lake, swim, and collect as much information or data as they want. That's in a very easy analogy way of how data leaks happen, and they happen constantly.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and the another thing is the privacy factor, which is the problem with AWS and Google and Microsoft Azure, is that they can actually read what you are storing on their servers. So they can actually scan your files and your data.
Wow.
Microsoft has been actually caught doing this in terms of scanning your information for passwords and trying to decrypt your files. So that's actually crazy, to be honest.
That's
So they
insane.
actually all, and basically they can access your data if they choose to. I'm not saying all of them do, but they can do that if they wish
If they
to.
want
Like
to.
there's the government that wants to and access to your certain information, and they say, "Hey, Microsoft, hand this over." More than likely, they will comply with that request. And what the differentiator with Iagon is, we're giving you full sovereignty of your own data. Basically, we also a middleware. We're a tooling set. So what we do is we connect. We're kind of like the Airbnb for storage and compute. So there's people that are providing their idle storage or idle compute, and people that are needing storage and compute. What the difference is no file is stored at one single point. It's no central risk. So basically, the file is sharded. What that means is sliced in many slices. If you want to use an analogy, we put it through a shredder, and we distribute the shreds of the shards, basically, or the shards, to people that are in the network that are providing their idle capacity. And those
Mm-hmm.
shreds are fully encrypted, and the only way to access those files is the person that uploaded it. So we use blockchain for that. So meaning that blockchain, think about it as like a fingerprint. Your fingerprint is unique to yourself. No one else has the same fingerprint. And basically, in order to access your data, only that person can use that through blockchain technology. Only that person has access to it. No middleware, no, not even the people that you're storing the shards of the data have access to your data. Even
Mm-hmm.
if they decrypt that, even if that data is leaked somehow, that shard is meaningless
It's irrelevant. Yeah.
without the all the shards being combined, and the only person that can combine that is the person that uploaded the file. So that's the differentiator, providing the privacy, and in terms of security as well. There's also other benefits in terms of cost effectiveness and things like that, but those are for I would say more relevant to the user.
Yeah. No, 100%. And with the major players, like the cost or barrier to entry to do this in a conventional sense is so large that it's really only big companies that you probably don't want to be dealing with that offer this as a service.
Yeah.
And you're also kind of at their mercy of they dictate how the game is played, which we've become really, really just okay with.
Yeah.
Like, how did that happen? When you read all this stuff, how did you instantly see that this was a massive need? Because I think obviously if you saw this back in 2013, like that's really early to even be thinking like this.
I mean, it's not everyone thinks. That's the thing. we're comfortable with convenience, right? Everything
Mm,
is about convenience. If it's easy to use, we're going to use it.
that's
Uh,
true.
and if it's something that where everyone is, we're going to use it, right? And the tools that are popular, if someone else has it, we want it as well. So I think it's kind of like it has a lot to do with social programming, and that's another topic in itself. But I think that one thing is that um, we are becoming less aware of our surroundings as we grow into the technological realm. So it's kind of hard to think actually what is actually going on. And a lot of these things have been proven, like in terms of people that are thinking in an extraordinary way, saying that hey, this is they're spying on us, the government's spying on us, but they're actually doing it. For example, I'll give you a real world example where, for example, in Dubai, when you come in Dubai, for example, the first time, you get everything is in front of your face, the surveillance. So they have when you go into the airport check-in, they scan you, and you scan your face, and basically your eyes and everything. So next time you visit, they have that data backed up, so they can actually they actually when you go in next time, they'll tell you, hey Navjit, welcome, and they know that this is you.
That's
This is kind
crazy.
of in your face technology, right? But in other realms and other countries, it's hidden. It's still there, but it's hidden because governments don't want you to know that they're actually collecting this information, or companies don't want you to know that, right? So for me, that from those experiences kind of helped me open my eyes a little bit, and having this marketing come to them. Even Google, for example, there's been examples where you actually there was a YouTube film where YouTube, I think, short video where the guy was talking. He doesn't have a cat, but he was talking about cat food, and the phone was right next to him, and he was just talking about cat food the whole time. And a few a few minutes after, he's getting targeted messages, targeted ads that are related to cat food. Now they're trying to sell him cat food. Now how is that possible without listening in to what he's saying? All right, it's just crazy. So there's a lot of information like this out there that people are aware of, or they decide to ignore because just it's convenient
Convenience.
to use these apps.
Yeah, by the day it seems like tinfoil hat stuff is becoming less and less tinfoil hat, and it's more
Exactly.
reality.
Yeah.
But they did a really good job of us self-governing, like restricting. Like if someone says anything that's to the contrary to the given narrative, instantly you're labeled as extremist, whatever, whatever.
Yeah.
But I think more and more of these data breaches and things happening that are more in your face will hopefully wake people up over time. I
Exactly. Yeah.
live in Canada, so for here, I'm very concerned for our country because we just comply with anything under the name of convenience or safety,
Yeah.
and especially with case in point, Trump decided our election. He purposely trolled our country into picking a guy we didn't even know, which is honestly insane. And the people in this country that voted for him, I'm like, how do you not see what's going on here? Like, why are you letting some guy that you say you hate? Why is he dictating our whole election? So it's
Yeah.
insane how much we comply, and I'm hopeful that conversations like this will hopefully wake people up to the reality of it all.
Yeah.
But how do we slow that down, or is there even a way to slow that down?
I mean, just becoming self-aware, and when I think that like real world examples and experiences really help, and I think that sharing these real world examples instead of just throwing out stuff in the thin
Mm,
air where people are just going to ignore it, it's kind of more helpful. So for me, it was more realizing when I actually went to Dubai and actually
saw
took
it.
a picture, and then the next time I came, I'd be like, oh, they actually have my data already. You know, it's crazy. Like and you don't. It's not like you don't have any other angle to go. You can't like go in a different line, or
It's insane.
you're forced to go through those steps in order to do what you need to do in Dubai, for example, right? If you need to
Mm.
go to a conference or if you need to set up a business, whatever it is, right? So it's more becoming normalized, right? Whereas and accepted because you have to uh, you that's the only way to do something, right?
It seems like it's all very planned and opportunistic. Like you look back through history when these things that we now slowly become normal, that are invasions of privacy or freedom, they usually do it when we're at like a peak emotional states where
Yeah.
something will happen and then they're like, okay, we can do this. Like COVID seemed like an experiment for that to
Agree.
me. Like that,
Yeah.
I'm sure I'll get labeled like a conspiracy theorist there, but it really was like, okay, let's throw this out there and see what we can get away with.
Mm.
And in Canada, it was insane here, man. Where were you during that whole thing?
I actually was in Norway during that time, so
Okay,
it was less constrained. And but I got to see both aspects. My parents live in Canada as well, and
okay,
my family lives in Canada as well. I understood there was a large difference on what was going on country to country. One of the things was obviously the mandatory injections. The other ones was face masks. For example, Sweden took a completely different policy than others, and they ended up being right in the end. But in the beginning, they were ridiculed because there was no masks, there was no like restrictions, and no
wow,
requirements for specific and then they took a complete route, a right route, but at the end it's so much media that's just pushing a different direction, right? It happens, and that's how we are kind of we're forced to do things that we need to do. For example, in Norway, in order to continue practicing as a dentist, you needed to take a shot. You had to take a booster shot at least once, and then they required a second one, and then they stopped asking for it, right? But now, as a person, when you're actually working and your livelihood is based on that, you have to do
you
it
have no
because
choice.
you have no choice, right? But people are waking up to this a little bit more, and hopefully making a bigger stand on certain topics like this.
Yeah, the scariest part about the whole COVID thing for me was not even how the government tried to force things on us. That's nothing new to me. Like that's something that's they've
Yeah.
been doing for a very long time. If
Yes.
you wake up and look for 2 seconds, you see that's happening everywhere.
Yeah.
The scariest part for me was how easily they turned people against each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was shocking to me. How quickly people were divided that were formerly best friends forever over something that was just made up on the spot. Like
Yeah.
literally, these rules were just literally some dude saying, "Let's do this. Let's try this," and then people they're like fighting their whole life over this. I could not believe that. Where did you experience much of that? And then like, how did we get to a place where that happened so quickly?
Fortunately, not. I didn't experience so much that in Norway because Norway, the people are less confrontational.
Okay.
They're not confronting like that. They talk, but they won't talk to you directly about that. So,
Mm,
for me, it was a little, and my practice, I'm normally wearing a mask. So for
okay.
me, it wasn't a big change from wearing a mask or not wearing a mask. But at home, we never wore a mask, right? Even in like small transits, we never wore a mask. Uh, it it's obviously we did take it consciously. If there's a lot of people wearing around us, obviously just be respectful and wear a mask. That's what we were doing. But
Mm.
for me, it was it was a normal thing. At work, I was doing it, so it wasn't so
It was
much.
not a big deal.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, here people were policing each other. And if they saw an
yeah,
Instagram story where we weren't following the latest mandate or had one too many people, we had seven
yeah,
instead of six, they're
yeah,
like, how could you? Do you not care about your grandparents? Do you not care about
yeah,
my
yeah,
grandparents? It
yeah.
was shocking to me how quickly we all conformed to something that was made up. But and then it really makes you question, like, how many times have we done that to get to where we are today?
Mm,
And so I think that's why a lot of people are really looking at the need for decentralized things.
mm,
And with what you guys are trying to solve, that's one of the biggest things because of how much we rely on technology, like you said earlier, how
mm.
we are relied on convenience. So how does Iagon get to a place where it has that same level of convenience as the other major options?
Yeah, so obviously the main thing is just to have performance and the UX matching the current apps, right? Performance is not there yet. UX we're working on, and we have something like a Dropbox version coming out soon that will help at least the retail side. We do have on the mainstream side at least a lot of enterprise interest. We've been working with Worth Group for an MVP for monetizing 3D parts, where they use the storage and the royalty payouts of the blockchain. And we also have a few others that are yet to be announced as well, where the enterprises are really interested in using a compliant, secure, and private storage solution, and or participating in as a node network because they have a lot of idle capacities, like storage and compute, and they can basically utilize their underused capacities and earn a second revenue stream that they didn't have before.
Hmm.
So this is great for them. I think they and a lot of these we were fortunate enough to have these companies really interested in our product and our vision. So they're working with us and formulating how to approach these solutions. For the retail side, we think we can cater to a little bit better UX, and if we can improve the performance over time, I think that will allow us to become a little bit more mainstream, I would say, in on the retail side.
And why did you guys decide to build this on Cardano?
So Cardano, we migrated from Ethereum to Cardano in 2021. We took the decision to migrate to Cardano in late 2020. The reason why we first were on Ethereum is because Ethereum at that time was kind of the only solution out there for apps to build on. And there wasn't so many options back then. And what we realized quickly was that Ethereum lacked a lot of, things that we would have wanted, which were in Cardano eventually. For example, security and in terms of decentralization, in terms of cost effectiveness. At that time, we're able to offer 80% reduction in price compared to centralized solutions because one is that Cardano is very cost effective. Now, if we were to have that same solution on Ethereum, at that time, we were paying like, $70 or more in gas fees. Currently, for example, 1 terabyte is $2 a month, right? So that would be way more than what some user would pay, and that would be ridiculous. We wouldn't be able to compete against centralized solutions just because the gas fees are so much. So Cardano provided a lot of that, but they were also late to the game, and there a lot of they took a lot of study first approach, research first approach, which laid the foundation for what Cardano is today because they're very built in a very robust way, and it's awesome to have such a secure and decentralized blockchain. And I think that was what we came to when we researched. That's why we moved over. A lot of these kind of advantages that Cardano had, Ethereum didn't have.
Yeah, I've heard that story so many times from builders that chose Ethereum because it was really the only option, and
Yeah.
then they saw a lot of flaws, and that's why my general thesis for why I'm such a big supporter in Cardano is because I think that more and more builders are going to have that discovery, and then hopefully come over to Cardano. One of the biggest things that I've seen for why people don't believe in Cardano is because they took that approach. Ironically, like why I think they'll be successful is also why I believe they're not well known. So how do you think the ecosystem gets to a place where people see Cardano for what it can be, not for the stories that used to be told about it?
I think once they start realizing, like, seeing this adoption from other builders, I think they'll come to realize, okay, this is not just, a cult community as people
Yes.
are calling it, right? Once, for example, for Igon, I can't say for everyone else, but I've seen other companies as well in the ecosystem have a lot of good partnerships with bigger companies and bigger enterprises. For us, it's with Worth Group, which is a Fortune 500 out of Europe, and we're also piloting with the Fortune 50, which is yet to be disclosed.
I was
And
going to ask about that.
we have another Fortune 500 that we're communicating with, and hopefully being announced. That one hopefully being announced earlier. So there's a lot of interest, and once these things announcements come and these are public to the community, I think people will start realizing, hey, okay, time to look at what's going on in Cardano. Why are they choosing Igon over other cloud or deep in projects out there like Filecoin or Arweave or whatever have you? Why are they looking at Igon, which is a small market cap, on Cardano, and not the other ones? It's not just because of Igon's technology, but also because they're built on Cardano, and Cardano offers a lot of these advantages that we don't have on other L1s, right?
Yeah, so you mentioned Filecoin. So that's would you call that like the Ethereum equivalent of what you guys are trying to do?
Yeah, I mean IPFS is its own system, right? So for me, I don't know if it's the Ethereum equivalent, but it's much more different. It's we're focusing a lot on Web2 enterprises. We're focusing on compliance. So
Mm,
and what we're doing is we're providing the tool set for the node operators, and we're providing the tool set for the end users. So now you're able to customize your kind of solution or what you want as a user and what as a node operator, where you want to provide your services or who you want to provide the services to. And that customizability will give us options for Web2 enterprises that seek compliance. For example, on the node operator side, we will have not some of these tools aren't developed yet, but like let's say you have the option to say, hey, I want to make sure my user is KYC, yeah, because I don't want any other non KYC users on there. Or you can have it non KYC. I don't care what user stores data on my node because it's sharded, right? I don't really care.
mm,
I want only users from a specific region to be storing on my services, right? On the user side, I want only high performance nodes. I want only nodes in EU because I want to be GDPR compliant, right? I want, maybe I want lower costs, so I don't need a, crazy uptime. Maybe I want to pay less, right? So this customizability is something that enterprises really want because now you're able to geolocate shards in a specific region, and you're able to comply with an instance because you're putting the onus of the compliance on the user rather than the middleware, because the middleware always has that onus where we have, you know, you have the data controller, you have the data processor. Here, the data processor and the data controller are the user itself,
mm.
which makes it a much more newer architecture. So we're trying to solve these kind of solutions on both sides to help cater to the user at the end goal, basically.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, especially with where the world is right now, to accommodate the people who have been building Web 2 for a long time. Definitely makes a lot of sense. So, with where Igon is right now, what is the scalability of like what size of application, given something that's already in Web 2, like how big of something could Iagon serve right
Right,
now?
yeah, right now we're already serving Intersect, so we have our enterprise compute nodes out,
Cool.
and Intersect is already kind of trying it out. They've actually said that something that took, first of all, they're saving about 50% in terms of
Wow.
costs because they're currently using AWS.
Mm,
They're only trying it out for a partial of their services. And one comment we got from them was that it something that took them 1 hour to install on Iagon took 15 minutes. So the performance is there, the cost effectiveness is there, and we can cater to a large company like Intersect that has a lot of data, and running a lot of services on AWS. So it's really scalable, modular. So, like for example, for storage size, currently we have around 27 petabytes of data availability. I mean, that's small in terms of relative size to what a lot of companies have in terms of larger companies, but it can cater to a lot of startups and can cater to mid-sized companies as well. For the compute side, it's modular, so we can expand as the needs expand. So
mm.
that's not a problem.
Really quickly, if you're enjoying the episode, please consider subscribing. Every single week, I'm bringing on the best minds in the fields that are shaping the future of our world: AI, crypto, social media, all of the things pushing our lives forward. I'm bringing on the best minds to give you the tools to help in shaping our future. So if you're interested in any of that, definitely consider subscribing. Hit that button down below. It is completely for free. And make sure to hit that little bell icon so that YouTube will actually show you our episodes. Thank you so much for doing that. You are an absolute legend. Let's get back into the episode. So how do you scale upward? Like how with it being decentralized, how do you achieve the scale to take on anything and everything?
And so one of the incentives that we have is for the node operators is IAG rewards and revenue sharing. So revenue sharing, we have don't know if it's called revenue shares, but it's basically subscriptions. They're owed a fee
Mm,
because they're providing the service. So 90% of the fees are going to the node operators. So this is kind of an incentive for them to
To do it.
provide more services. As it scales in terms of adoption, nodes will see that, okay, I'm getting more money because there's more participation. Maybe I want to expand my operations, and maybe I want
Mm.
to earn more, right? I think this is part of that, and the Iagon rewards are to kickstart that, so we have the availability from the start in terms of storage and compute, and eventually once the rewards start kicking in with the subscription fees, and the fees coming from, for example, Intersect, that will slowly translate into nodes being proactive and providing more of these services.
For people who don't understand, I'm sure we've said node a bunch, but I think there's probably people listening to this who don't know what that is. So can you explain what a node is and who becomes that?
Yeah, so node in general is anyone that's providing their idle storage or compute capacity. So if you want to go back to the Airbnb concept that we had earlier, where Airbnb, you actually search for a house or apartment, whatever specifics you want, and you look for a size or bedrooms, a number of bedrooms, in the vicinity of in the city or outside of the city, whatever you want near the beach, right? You have all these customizable options, and you have different houses and apartments. Well, same with Iagon. For example, we have different nodes. For example, data centers. People that are providing their running their PCs at home, or it might be even in an office, right, in a workspace. So you have different nodes that are providing their idle capacities. So anyone can provide idle capacities to the network as long as you have storage and compute. And that's how I would explain it, I would say.
That's awesome. And then Cardano in general, what are your predictions for? Let's go even broader than that. Like the crypto market right now, there's obviously a lot of fear and panic in markets of all kind, given everything that's going on. So, what is it? Do you have any sort of guesstimations or predictions for where you see things going over the next 6 to 12 months?
I think that we're in for like at least because in the world, the situation in the world right now is kind of unstable, right? The macro, if you want to call it that, the macro situation. We have wars going on in multiple places, disputes going on in multiple spaces, right? And we have the tariffs going on, right? And then there's a lot of things happening that I would say are negative to the market. So I do believe that the market eventually, and it's not financial advice, but in maybe in the later this year to early next year starts picking up.
Mm.
As long as there's no real world, let's say, problems that escalate into even further problems. And I think that once these problems are sorted out slowly, and it won't be happening over time, like in 1 month or so, I think we'll be in a better place.
Yeah, I agree. I say something very similar, and I always put the caveat there where it's like, I can't tell you when this will happen
Yeah,
or guarantee that it will. And it could go the other way, but if it goes the other way, we've got way bigger problems.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So we'll see how it goes there. Cardano really hasn't had its like Ethereum moment in the market. Like if you go back to the last bull run,
yeah.
Ethereum was very much the darling of that, and then everything that was built on that got crazy, insane increases and lifts that we look at today as normal.
Mm.
Do you see that happening for Cardano the next time this market moves?
For sure, for sure. I think Cardano is gonna be, in my opinion, again, not financial wise, a golden
Yeah,
goose.
none of this is.
Yeah, none of this is financial wise, but in my opinion, it's going to be the golden goose of the next bull run because I think that there's already a lot of activity, a lot of great builders building on Cardano. There's a lot of adoption occurring on Cardano that people are unaware of yet. And once those things go out and to the public, I think people will understand why Cardano is probably going to be basically the technology to go after, and adopt or buy or whatever you want to call it in the next cycle.
How did you find and how do you continue to find development talent to build here? Because I just tried to launch an NFT project. I'm in the current state of doing that on Cardano. And it was shocking how few developers I could find. I was genuinely shocked. Like I went to a massive platform like Upwork, and the amount of people that even had Cardano in their bio
Mm.
was shockingly small. So how do
Yeah.
you source talent?
So that's a good question. I think that's one of the most difficult questions or and answers in terms of, how you go about it. It's really hard to find good talent and not just in Cardano and just in general. I think that I've been through three teams myself, so I understand why it's hard, um, and why it's hard to find the right team as well. Now we're in a much better position. We have a great team around us, and it's taken a time to develop. We actually a lot of that was word of mouth. Like we contacted in the ecosystem to see if anyone's available. Some people are not really vocal on if they have available or not, right? So you have to really keep on pushing it and keep on asking around before you get, hey, okay, this guy might be looking at work. Or some of the positions we have actually catered directly from the community. So I've seen a lot of proactive or active people within the community that have, either supported. For example, Brock is a great example. We brought him on, I think, a year and a half ago, or a year ago. Basically, he's been with us for a while now, but he was very active in the community in terms of answering questions, even answering difficult technical questions. Like, okay, we definitely need this guy on our team. He's being very active and answering questions and stuff like that. So we brought him on board. So that's one way of doing it, and I think that really helps because even on the business side, a lot of our business connections have been through the community, because they really like the idea and they go out of their way to kind of make that connection. And then
Hmm.
so not just talent on that wise. What other ways have been scouting talent? Most of it, the most helpful ones we've gotten in terms of the most talent we've gotten is from word of mouth, just talking to people within the ecosystem. And we really don't bring up Cardano as a skill set. We say, okay, because now we have Aiken as a smart contract language. So we just talk. If they have experience with a certain language, they can easily adopt to Aiken now, right? So it's much easier to develop on Cardano these days, without having to talk about Plutus. Yeah,
Makes, yeah, far more approachable. But
yeah,
the state of development at large, something that I've had the unique opportunity of seeing as it's changed with AI getting into this world, and I've had a very unique experience because my girlfriend works at an incredibly large, like Fortune 500 company as a developer, and so I hear in the background their internal meetings. And
yeah.
then her brother's also a developer, but he's entry level. He just graduated and he can't find a job for the life of him.
Oh wow.
And so he can't. So I see that a lot of people who are going to be struggling with finding a job in the Web 2 space as people start to panic about where AI is going. I think there's going to be massive opportunities in Web 3.
Yeah.
How, if a developer's listening to this and they're curious about potentially becoming skilled in this space, how does someone learn? Like, so you mentioned Aiken, but how does someone like become familiar with that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, from I haven't had experience myself going in the direction, but what I would imagine is that if you are like, for example, Brock, he's very active in the community, not just and not just with Iagon. He's also active on Twitter. He's active on asking questions. I think that he was very engaged in the ecosystem, and so people know him, right? And I think that also helps in terms of finding right people to talk to, and then trying to maybe find a job through that. I think
Hmm.
that would be the approach I would take if I were in that situation. Just being, let's say if I really like Cardano, maybe I want to work in that ecosystem, or not just maybe a Cardano project. I want to work on a Pacific Cardano project. Be active in that discussion, socials. Go in the group, and I think that will make you stand out as a person that's interested in working. Yeah.
100%. And the community that we've mentioned numerous times for Cardano is pretty fantastic for the most
Yeah.
part. Because a lot of people who are very active, very open, very receptive to questions. They won't come and call you an idiot for the most part, which is great. It's a great place to learn.
Yeah.
And I think that's another thing too. For developers in general, they're not usually the most social and outgoing people. So
Yeah,
putting
that's true.
themselves out there is
Yeah.
a difficult thing. But
Yeah.
I think with the fact that a lot of this goes and breathes on Twitter, it can be a little more approachable for people who aren't super social. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking like, okay, how do I get here? Twitter's a great place to start.
Yeah.
Go follow the projects that you resonate with. Go to Tap Tools, see what you like, research each tool on there,
Yeah.
and figure out what you like. I think that Cardano will reach its moment when there's a tool that's like too good for people to not use.
Yeah.
Could you explain how current tools that people understand and use today would be different if it was built on Cardano? Pick whichever one makes the most sense for you.
Yeah. I mean, for example, great example is Gmail or Proton Mail.
Okay.
Right. I use both of those apps, and I think that they're obviously important for different reasons. Proton being a little bit more privacy and security implemented. Gmail more so ease of use, right? I think how Cardano, if something was built like that using blockchain technology, what would be interesting is just kind of maybe using a secure storage platform to store the emails, where everything you control is yours, right, and private and not central, and more sovereign, I would say. What the complication there would be is the UX, right?
Mm,
Trying to get users. So the first always hurdle when you're jumping into Web3 is the wallet, right?
true.
Getting familiar with a wallet is not an easy task.
It's scary for people.
It's not an easy task as much as you want to say, because we're familiar with it, we know how to use it. It's like, oh, okay, this is easy. But if you try out any Web2 person that has no clue what a wallet is, it's they give up
Way too
very
much.
quickly.
Hmm.
On hey, I don't want to forget it. I don't want to do this, right? But I guess it also depends on what we talked about it earlier is the convenience factor. How important is it for you to have self-sovereign and hold your own funds, be
Hmm.
control of your assets, right?
Yeah.
I think that as people get more knowledgeable on that, I think people will start to actually try to learn how to do this, and that's why we're here, right? We're trying to
Yes.
learn this stuff because we actually care about it.
100%. I think more and more people will wake up to that as the pain gets more severe. And my huge point that I'm hopeful for is that over the last like bull runs that brought a lot of people in, the tools and resources to learn how to play and navigate the ecosystem were pretty bad and
Yes.
not very accessible. Now we don't even need good creators as much anymore because we have AI that can be your companion walking you through these things.
Yeah.
And so I think I think it will be a massive catalyst for adoption. So I'm really hopeful for that. But one thing that and I don't even know if, like, I wanted to ask you about this. I had this written down. Was most of the problems that we see today, or like a lot of it's built by social media because it's the narratives that we see and algorithmic things pushing in our face. And of course, if they're in any sort of centralized way, people have interests that they're going to go after, right?
Yeah.
And these big companies are always going to do that. So as much as we act like we have a free market of distribution, that's simply not the case. My background's in YouTube, and so I've experienced channels getting nuked for talking about a specific subject
Oh,
or
really? Yeah.
like all the time. It happened all the time. Is decentralized social media truly possible? Like, is that something that could be built on Cardano?
Yeah, of course. I mean, never say never. I mean, this is definitely possible, right? I think it's not too far-fetched, I would say, right?
Okay.
The problem comes is like when you're actually forming the entity, right? Um,
Mm,
and you're actually going into like the real world problems, I would say. Like I was forced to, for example, if I wanted to open up a company in Dubai, I had to go through this process, and sharing my data, right? I think the real problem is when people start creating these tools, right? They have to actually go through these real world problems of like
mm,
registering a business, getting funding, being out there, right? Being in the spotlight, right? So now you have another problem, which is influence. Once you come like Telegram, for example, right? We have a huge app, and then the CEO, I forgot his name, got arrested in France, and then we don't know what happened in that. People can just speculate what happened there, right?
Pavel Durov is his name.
Yeah, Pavel Durov. Yeah, and people can just speculate what actually happened because Telegram was hesitant to give away their encryption keys, right?
Yeah.
So there has to be a way that, if you want to go for decentralized stuff, I think there has to be a way of saying, hey, I don't control this. This is this is completely decentralized. This is we have to get to that point.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we haven't reached that point yet, right? Cardano, I think, is there, right? And I think that some of these apps that people use on a daily basis, because Cardano is not the app and dApp that people are going to be using every day. That's not going to be. It's more for me as for securing my assets or whatnot, right? It's not
Mm-hmm.
really for me to use on an everyday basis. So if you want decentralized apps, I think we have to get to that level of decentralization where we're saying, hey, we don't control this. It's not up to us. Even if you have take me to prison or something and say, hey, you give me the encryption keys or something, you can physically say that by and with confidence say that we don't
I don't
have
control
access
this.
to that. I can't do anything,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
And
True.
that's what we need to get to.
That's a very good point. And it does seem like even building a business in Web 2 as someone who's like bootstrapped their own businesses and like every way of building a business is extremely difficult and there's so many trade-offs and when you try to now build it in Web 3, there's even extra. And so I really think it's going to come down to hopefully the next wave of people buying into the message and
Yeah.
understanding that when they get knocked down, which will happen thousands of times if they try to build something here, which I'm sure you've experienced, that the message or the vision is worth the pain.
Yeah.
And I'm really hopeful that we can get to that place where that happens.
Yeah.
I don't know how soon it does, but I'm very hopeful that it does. Also, with the big change in tone from the U.S. government in particular when it comes to crypto and Web3, I'm hopeful that will change things.
Yeah.
What are your views on that whole shift?
I think it's a good thing, right? And I think the Trump administration has done a good job in specifically when it relates to the blockchain side of it or the crypto side. They made it very they're very proactive in changing the regulation and making sure that it's a central part of their focus in terms of adoption, business adoption. I do worry though because U.S. has a very tendency of changing politics, or every 4 years I think you get an election there. So and usually what happens during all those administrative changes is the last person cancels everything the other person did, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's very unstable in that sense. But I hope it's more permanent and because obviously businesses do want to operate in the U.S., do want to cater to consumers in the U.S., right? And especially with blockchain coming very relevant, and obviously U.S. is kind of at the forefront when looking at certain technology, right? They want to, and the world or the Western world and the European world, right? They would look at the U.S. sometimes for certain adoption, even though Switzerland has already, for example, regulated crypto and made it acceptable to operate here as a crypto company. A lot of the countries are hesitant because U.S. hasn't done it yet, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a good thing in general, but let's hope it stays that way, long term. That's what we're hoping for.
Yeah, I'm hoping that even the next administration will just see the necessity of doing that
Yeah,
from maintaining their power in the global economy.
yeah,
So that's my hope, anyways. And in terms of so they mentioned the fund or not the fund, but the holdings that they have for what do they call that specifically? Do you remember where they're holding a certain amount of seized assets?
treasury.
Yes, I think that's what it was.
Yeah.
And so I think it's only a matter of time until they actually buy Bitcoin, at least. Do
Okay.
you see that happening?
I think they've already done it. I think they're already doing it in general, but and I don't know, different states are actually already doing it. So I think that
Has
they've
the
come
federal
that.
government done that yet? Have they purchased Bitcoin? I thought it was all just seized Bitcoin.
I think they've actually seized Bitcoin, but that to me is like the same. They're accepting
Okay.
that they're seizing the funds, right? And
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
holding those assets, not liquidating them, right?
True.
Yeah,
Yeah, very good point.
yeah,
That's a belief and a statement of that. So,
yeah,
and I think it's only a matter of time where there's a big buy, and then that's going to set off a chain reaction where once one country that the size of the states buys, then every other country
Yeah,
has to buy,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And so I think that sets off a chain reaction for the whole globe, the crypto market in general.
yeah,
So I think this episode will probably be watched a lot by people when the bull market does pick back up and people start looking through and they're like, what is IAG? And they
yeah,
come and they're asking questions. What the hell is Cardano? All that stuff.
yeah.
If someone is in that situation, trying to learn and gobble up as much information as they can, how do they start their Web3 journey, as corny as that sounds? And how do they not get totally burned?
Yeah, that's the kind of the how do we answer that question? Because a lot of people have gotten burned, right?
Yes.
Um, I think that's the fault of the Web3 community, right? And that's how we've been kind of programmed in a way, programmed on the early days because we had some massive bull runs in 2017 as well, and people saw a lot of returns in those years, right? And they some people came rich off just those bull runs, right? And we still stick to that, right? We still have that ideology of quick gains.
Mm-hmm.
So what the first thing I would tell Web3 people coming into the Web3 is, this is a long-term game, not a short-term game. It's first and foremost is very you have to believe in what you are investing in, and again, not financial advice, any of this. You have to believe in what you're investing in. I see a lot of people invest in stuff that doesn't make sense to me. It's fine, like they might profit from it, they might not. But I think the main thing for you to know is, are you believing in the vision? This is something that you would actually use in the future, right? Is something that relates to you. Are the founders doxed? So we have in crypto and Web3 a lot of founders that aren't doxed, which is obviously decentralization part of it, right? But part of it as to being in now in the world, everyone's doxed almost everywhere, right? It's impossible to be a nomad these days, right? So I think it's important that, for me at least, the owners should be doxed, meaning that their information is available, publicly available, not easy, not hard to find, easy to find. I would more so, if I had to pick a couple of points, it's just focus on long term and
Mm-hmm.
focus on something that relates to you.
I agree. That's why my biggest holding has been Cardano for years, is because I think they took that approach. And in a world full of risk, scams, all these things, it was like the opposite. And so I kind of viewed that as like a beacon to like follow.
Yeah,
And hopefully it serves me well. We'll see. Only time will tell.
yeah.
But I do think that Cardano will have its moment in the very near future. But for Igon in particular, what's the plan for the next 12 months or so? I don't know if you plan, like, if you can possibly predict that far out, but what is the current plan?
Yeah, we have a full roadmap, so
Amazing.
it's easy to tell the 12 months because there's so
Awesome.
much to do. We have public compute that we're going to be working on. We have Stature, which is a reputation program protocol that will jump on top of the node operators, basically qualitative and quantitative measuring of the reputation of the nodes and how they operate. We have the Network Explorer also coming up, which is kind of like an L2 for Iagon. We will have kind of our own L2 that will cater to different chains. It will be not just Cardano, so now we can be chain agnostic.
Sweet.
We also have Worth Group MVP, which is helping monetizing 3D parts. That's hopefully coming onto at least there's a lot of vendors already interested in that solution. Worth Group expects that to be a 50 to $100 million revenue stream, which we would get some royalties off of, which is 2 to 5%. We have the Fortune 50 pilot that's still yet to be announced, hopefully, but that's very exciting for a lot of people and us as well. We have a few other surprises that are coming up, and we have NFT subscriptions, the storage. We have a tax app. So what we want to build around Iagon, and it sometimes might seem like we're trying to do everything, but what we're trying to do is drive adoption to storage and compute. Storage by itself and compute by itself is needed, but it's very boring. So we want to make sure that we build these apps that people will come and use. For example, a Dropbox-like solution. For example, like a tax app that you would store your, you would be utilizing the storage with storing your, tax information and things like that on Iagon. But at the same time, you have something easy to use for Web3. There's a lot of missing information on taxes and sort of stuff like that in the Cardano ecosystem. And that's something we want to cater to as well. So there's these apps that we're building. We have a encrypted messaging app as well that we're working on. There's a lot of things that we're working on, uh, and a fantasy brawl that's been slightly mentioned. It's a fantasy league which will also cater to revenue streams for the node operators. Basically, all the information will be stored and it'll be run on Iagon in terms of the compute and infrastructure compute. So the apps can be built on Iagon. That's what we want to say. And we want to actually drive the first initial apps and then let the market decide what they want to build on
Where it
Iagon.
goes.
Yeah.
What kind of fantasy league?
It's a fantasy that's kind of like a daily fantasy league. So basically, if you will, FanDuel's Fantasy Brawl.
Yeah.
It's called Fantasy Brawl, basically FanDuel.
Cool.
Yeah.
Sweet. That's awesome. So
Yeah.
decentralized FanDuel. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
And so for people who are listening to this who we've piqued their interest, how do they find out more about Iagon and how do they get involved with everything?
If you want to go to a website, www.iagon.com, IAGON. If you scroll to the footer, all the way at the bottom, you'll see our socials there. So we have X, which we're very active on, Discord, which we're very active on. So if you want more to talk to the community and the Iagon community and ask questions for technical help or whatnot, Discord is the route. If you just want to see or follow our socials, announcements, and listen to our community on X, that's also follow us on X. We have others as well, other socials as well, but those are the most two proactive. And then we have Telegram if you don't have Discord.
Sweet. Awesome. Yeah. And definitely go follow Nav over on Twitter as well. He drops little teasers of things that are coming. So definitely go give him a follow there. Well, thanks for coming on, man. This was absolutely awesome. I hope to get you back on here in the near future to talk about the updates. And is there anything that I missed that you would have wanted to bring up?
No, I mean we talked about a lot. I think we covered most of it, and there's still a lot that's missing, but I think we can save that rest for later. I appreciate
Sounds
you
good.
having
Yeah.
me, man.
Absolutely. We'll have to have you back on and we'll keep it going.
Thanks.